Why does life keep repeating the same pain? Have you ever noticed how certain problems seem to follow you through life? The faces change, the places change, the circumstances change. Yet somehow, the feeling remains familiar. You trust someone, they disappoint you. You start over, the same pattern returns. You work hard, you get overlooked again. After a while, it begins to feel personal, as if life has chosen a particular lesson and refuses to move on. Most people believe their suffering comes from bad luck. They blame the wrong people, the wrong timing, the wrong circumstances. But what if the real cause is something deeper? What if life keeps repeating the lesson because the lesson itself has not been understood? This is one of the hardest truths to accept. Life rarely changes its message. It only changes the messenger. The same fear may arrive through a different relationship. The same disappointment may arrive through a different opportunity. The same frustration may arrive through a different challenge. From the outside, everything looks different. Underneath, it is often the same lesson wearing a different mask. The Stoics understood something that most people spend years resisting. Life is not always trying to hurt you. Sometimes it is trying to reveal where you are still attached, still afraid, or still searching for certainty in a world that has never promised it. And that realization changes everything. The hidden expectations that create suffering. Few people realize how many invisible contracts they carry inside their minds. They never write them down. They never speak them aloud. Yet they expect reality to honor them. If I am loyal, people should be loyal back. If I work hard, I should be recognized. If I care deeply, I should be appreciated. At first, these beliefs seem reasonable. In fact, they often feel obvious. The problem is not having preferences. The problem begins when preferences become expectations, and expectations quietly become demands. Then reality does what reality has always done. It refuses to follow the script. The promotion goes to someone else. The relationship ends despite your effort. The person you trusted makes a choice you never expected. Suddenly, the pain feels larger than the event itself, not because of what happened, but because of what you believed should have happened. This is why two people can experience the same setback and respond completely differently. One sees an unfortunate event. The other sees a violation of how life was supposed to work. The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. Much of human suffering begins when reality collides with an assumption. And the stronger the assumption, the harder the collision. Life becomes lighter when you stop treating your expectations as guarantees, because the world was never obligated to fulfill them in the first place. The illusion of control. There is a reason expectations are so difficult to let go. They create a comforting illusion. The illusion that life can be controlled. Most people carry this belief without realizing it. If I do everything right, things will work out. If I give enough, they will stay. If I prepare enough, nothing will go wrong. These ideas feel safe because they suggest that uncertainty can be eliminated through effort. But life keeps proving otherwise. You can be honest and still be misunderstood. You can be committed and still lose the relationship. You can do everything correctly and still watch the outcome move in a different direction. That reality is uncomfortable, not because it is unfair, but because it exposes the limits of your control. Many people spend years trying to manage things that never belong to them. The opinions of others, the emotions of others, the choices of others, the future itself. The harder they try, the more anxious they become, because control over those things is never truly available. The Stoics drew a simple line: your actions belong to you. Your character belongs to you. Your decisions belong to you. Everything else exists outside that boundary. The moment you understand this, a strange sense of freedom appears. You stop chasing certainty. You stop negotiating with the uncontrollable. And for the first time, your peace no longer depends on outcomes. It depends on how you choose to meet them. How the mind turns pain into fear. Pain has a strange way of changing the way people see the world. At first, the wound is real. A betrayal, a rejection, a disappointment you never saw coming. But after the event passes, something else often remains. Not the pain itself, the fear of experiencing it again. Without realizing it, the mind begins building a new strategy. It starts looking for warning signs. It becomes more cautious, more suspicious, more alert. A delayed text suddenly feels significant. A small change in someone's behavior feels worth analyzing. A minor mistake at work feels larger than it really is. The mind is no longer responding to what is happening. It is responding to what happened before. This is how pain slowly transforms into fear, not because the world became more dangerous, but because the memory of pain became stronger than the reality of the present moment. The challenge is that fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It tells you that you are simply being careful, that you are learning from experience. And sometimes that is true. But there is a difference between awareness and hypervigilance. Awareness sees reality clearly. Fear sees potential threats everywhere. One keeps you grounded. The other keeps you exhausted. Eventually, many people stop living in the present. They begin living in anticipation, not of what is happening, but of what they hope never happens again. And that is when the wound starts controlling the future long after the event itself is over. The exhaustion of living in the future. One of the greatest sources of suffering is not the present moment. It is the future we keep imagining. Most people spend far more time inside tomorrow than inside today. They replay conversations that have not happened. They predict outcomes that do not exist. They prepare themselves for disasters that may never arrive. A meeting next week becomes a source of stress today. A possible rejection steals the peace of an entire evening. A future problem begins affecting a present reality. And often, nothing has actually happened. The mind simply fills uncertainty with fear. This habit feels productive. It feels responsible. After all, planning ahead seems wise. But planning and worrying are not the same thing. Planning leads to action. Worry leads to endless mental repetition. One creates direction. The other creates fatigue. Think about how many times people suffer twice. First, in their imagination. Then, in reality. And sometimes, reality turns out far better than expected. Yet, the emotional cost was already paid. The Stoics understood something many people overlook. The future has enough uncertainty on its own. It does not need our imagination, making it heavier. Every hour spent rehearsing disaster is an hour stolen from the life already happening. The greatest tragedy is not that bad things happen. It is that many people miss today's peace because they are busy negotiating with a tomorrow that does not yet exist. The armor that slowly becomes a prison. After enough disappointment, people rarely stay the same. They adapt. They protect themselves. They build armor. At first, that armor serves a purpose. It helps them survive difficult seasons. It helps them recover. It helps them keep moving when trust feels impossible. But what begins as protection can slowly become a way of life. Someone who was hurt becomes emotionally distant. Someone who was abandoned refuses to depend on anyone. Someone who was betrayed begins questioning every act of kindness. Over time, These behaviors feel normal, even necessary. Yet something important gets lost. The person is no longer protecting themselves from pain. They are protecting themselves from life. The irony is difficult to see. The walls built to keep suffering out often keep connection out as well. Friendship requires openness. Love requires risk. Growth requires vulnerability. Without those things, life becomes safe. But it also becomes smaller. Real strength is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the ability to remain open despite uncertainty, to trust without guarantees, to care without demanding permanence, to engage with life knowing nothing lasts forever. The Stoics never taught emotional numbness. They taught courage. The courage to face reality without hiding behind fear. Because eventually, every person must answer one question. Is your armor protecting your life, or preventing you from fully living it? The lesson life has been trying to teach you. After years of frustration, disappointment, and resistance, a person eventually arrives at an uncomfortable question. What if life is not fighting me? What if it is teaching me? Most people spend years trying to change their circumstances. Very few spend time examining the lesson hidden inside them. They focus on the betrayal, but not the attachment that made the betrayal devastating. They focus on the rejection, but not the need for approval that gave rejection its power. They focus on uncertainty, but not their constant demand for guarantees. This is where everything begins to shift. The lesson is rarely the event itself. The lesson is what the event reveals. Life has a way of exposing what we depend on, what we fear losing, what we secretly believe we cannot live without. And once those things are exposed, we are given a choice: cling to them harder, or learn from them. The Stoics understood that peace does not come from arranging reality exactly as we prefer. Reality is too unpredictable for that. People change. Circumstances change. Fortunes change. Even our own priorities change over time. The person who accepts this becomes lighter, not because life becomes easier, but because they stop demanding certainty from an uncertain world. Eventually, they realize that every challenge was pointing toward the same truth. Strength is not found in controlling life. It is found in learning how to meet life exactly as it is. What changes when you finally accept reality? Something remarkable happens when a person stops arguing with reality. Not all at once. Gradually, quietly. The need to control everything begins to fade. The need for constant reassurance becomes weaker. The endless search for certainty starts losing its grip. Life still contains disappointment. People still leave. Plans still fail. Unexpected problems still appear. But those experiences no longer carry the same weight, because they are no longer being measured against impossible expectations. The person stops asking why reality refuses to follow their script. Instead, they begin working with what is actually in front of them. There is a different kind of freedom in that. A freedom that does not depend on success. A freedom that does not depend on approval. A freedom that does not disappear when circumstances change. For the first time, peace comes from within rather than from conditions outside. The future remains uncertain, but uncertainty no longer feels like an enemy. Change continues, but change no longer feels like a threat. Life remains imperfect, yet it becomes easier to carry. Not because pain disappears, but because pain no longer defines the story. And perhaps that is the lesson life was trying to teach all along. The moment you stop demanding that reality becomes something else, you finally become free to experience it as it is. And that is where real peace begins.